Broadcasting live from the Newsmax studio in New York City, here is Steve Malzberg.
You know, the Constitution makes it clear that a president's job is to faithfully execute the laws. In my view, the president has not faithfully executed the laws. This is not about impeachment. This is about his faithfully executing the laws of our country.
All right, so you're getting the point there from John Boehner in announcing the lawsuit against the president, that he doesn't believe he's executing the laws. And joining us now is Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief at Truth Revolt, editor-at-large, Breitbart News, and New York Times best-selling author. His newest one, The People versus Barack Obama, the criminal case against the Obama administration. Ben, welcome back, sir.
Hey, thanks so much.
Okay, so let me ask you. I mean, in just the past, today it was Hobby Lobby. The Supreme Court on Thursday rather, weighed in with another major case, a blow to the Obama administration. Earlier in the week, they did the same. I think it's 12 9-0 cases that the courts have ruled against Obama when it comes to issues of constitutionality with regard to his policies. So it would seem to me that this administration, more so than any other I could recall, I don't care about executive orders, the number versus the other number, one president versus the other. This administration is trying to get away with things that no other administration in modern history has tried, correct?
There's no question. The attempt to exert executive authority in the way that the Obama administration has done is unprecedented in American history. Now, it is true that the executive branch of government has been growing consistently for the last 100 years, but the President Obama's attempt to use authority in areas that are specifically designated areas of congressional authority is astonishing. Everything from his complete refusal to enforce immigration law on anybody between the ages of 16 and 30 to his attempt to use the HHS to mandate that religious employers cover birth control. These are all elements of an executive branch that is completely out of control. And that sees no limits to its own power. And honestly, even though everybody is sort of celebrating the Supreme Court putting limits on President Obama, the truth is these are extraordinarily minor limits. These are very narrow decisions. Even the 9-0 decision that came down last week, supposedly limiting his power to make recess appointments, Justice Scalia pointed out in his concurrence, all it actually does is allow him to make more recess appointments because it sets an objective standard. So if Congress breaks for 10 days, even if they don't declare themselves in recess, they're effectively in recess, and President Obama can go ahead and appoint anybody he wants. So what we're seeing right now is the unchecked growth of the executive branch, and it's very scary. I mean, when the President of the United States is going around saying things like, well, if Congress really, if they're really so upset about me usurping power, why don't they just act with me? That's dictatorial language. I mean, the way that the government works in the United States is not that if we disagree with you, that we have to act with you, or you're just going to do it on your own. That's exactly counter to what the Constitution was meant to design. And it's kind of pathetic that so many Americans have fallen into this pattern of, if I agree with the president, it's okay if he usurps authority, and if I disagree, suddenly it's bad.
No, you're absolutely right, and you hit on a great point, because we've played that soundbite. And the president, at his speech the other day, where they're suing me, and maybe I think he used an example. Maybe I made a mistake and said if I'm going to raise the minimum wage, and if you don't like it, sue me. Of course, he's totally demagoguing, misrepresenting the whole issue, and you're absolutely right. He's saying, I got to do this because, hey, you guys won't do it with me. You disagree with me, so start agreeing with me, and I won't have to do it by myself. You're absolutely right, and that's not the way this country works.
I mean, that's the way dictatorships work, and that's the way dictatorships begin, really and truly. I mean, I'm not talking about President Obama declaring himself president in perpetuity, but right now what we are drawing close to in the United States is an elected tyranny, the idea that we can elect our president every 4 years, and then we sit down and we shut up for the entirety of the 4 years while he goes ahead and he does exactly what it is that he wants. The President of the United States, right now, I mean, I was really thinking about this the other day. What exactly could the President of the United States not do that we would what could he do that we would actually place limits on him, or he would actually be stopped? I mean, let's take, for example, Obamacare. He says very often that he didn't get everything that he wanted. Originally, he wanted a public option on Obamacare. Well, right now, the supposed solution to the Hobby Lobby case for the Obama administration is for them to unilaterally pass a regulation stating that if I refuse to pay my employees contraceptive care, we'll just shift it to the taxpayer. So suddenly the taxpayer is going to get a subsidy from the federal government. Where exactly was the authority to do that? But we all just kind of accept it and move on with our lives. If the President of the United States wanted a public option tomorrow, who's to say that the president couldn't just set up a branch and start offering a public option? Who exactly would stop him? Congress theoretically could cut funding, but they have a really poor history of doing that, and the president of the United States could just go out and borrow more money anyway by blowing up the Treasury Department. So we've now fallen into a pattern where there are no checks and balances in the federal government, and that is extraordinarily scary no matter which side of the aisle you're on.
Absolutely, and you brought out before, laws that the president decided not to follow, and there are others with welfare reform, the work provision of welfare reform as signed by Clinton, and it goes right on down the line. And let's talk a little bit about what could be on the horizon here. He's basically announced it, and his spokesperson, his new spokesperson last week, basically trumpeted it and proudly that we're meeting with HHS, and we can't wait for the Congress to act, and we're moving ahead with immigration reform. Now, I don't know how much he could do, or if it even matters.
He can do whatever he wants. The president can do whatever he wants on immigration reform. He can actually exercise, theoretically, he could do a Jimmy Carter in which Jimmy Carter amnestied all of the draft dodgers from the Vietnam War. Theoretically, he could just say, look, I amnesty everybody who's committed a federal crime in crossing the border. He theoretically could do that. That would be the ultimate exertion of executive authority. That would actually be more constitutional than some of the other things that he's talking about doing. These kind of, I'm not going to enforce any immigration law like he did with the Dreamers. That would be the most extreme form. I think I could see him doing something like that. I don't think he's going to go that far. I think what he probably will do is just extend the Dreamers provision that he's created with the DOJ to virtually everybody. So now if you cross the border between such and such date and such date, we're not going to prosecute you so long as you're not a felon. I think that we're going to see that come from the president right quick.
Ben, let me ask you about the IRS. Many people have said if this were a Republican president, there'd be a lot of hell to pay, and it'd be being paid right now by the administration. I keep hearing, from the media that there's no proof that this went up to the administration level or the White House, but of course there's a lot of proof that's missing in the emails. Where do you think, the president has told us on scandal after scandal, not only that there's not an iota of impropriety, blah, 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 but he comes out and he goes to the microphone and he says, hey, I just found out about it watching it on TV like you. Veterans Administration, IRS, you name it. So when and if do you think will this president ever be held accountable for any of these things?
I'm not sure that the president's ever going to be held accountable, not when we have members of the House that don't want to do what it is that they can do. What I've suggested in the People versus Barack Obama is that what the House really should do is they should put forward a bill that would allow the American people to sue the administration directly for violations of law. That would be a useful provision. I don't think the House is going to do that. The House could theoretically impeach lower-level IRS officials. But right now, here's the problem. They keep doing all of these infinite things like, oh, I know, we'll call for Obama to appoint a special prosecutor. Why in hell would President Obama authorize his DOJ to appoint a special prosecutor? You know how corrupt this administration is? Here's an example of how corrupt and disgusting this administration is. If this doesn't prove how involved they are with the IRS, I'm not sure anything does. There's another IRS case that nobody's talking about, and that is the National Organization for Marriage, which is run by a guy named John Eastman. Their tax records, their confidential tax records, were leaked to the Human Rights Campaign, a gay rights organization.
Right,
That's a violation of federal law. And when that happened, John Eastman said, okay, fine, how about this? You prosecute the guy who's the middleman, right? There's a middleman there who got the information from the IRS and then passed it along to the Human Rights Campaign. Why don't you prosecute him? Because he's declaring the fifth. He refuses to testify under oath. The Obama administration said, we're not going to prosecute anybody on this. So John Eastman said, fine, grant the guy immunity. That way he can't plead the fifth, and we can compel him to testify about exactly who in the IRS funnels him the information. The Obama DOJ came back and said, we won't give him immunity either. So in other words, we're not going to prosecute him, and we won't give him immunity so he can testify. That is what we call a cover-up.
Yeah, that is certainly what you call a cover-up. Let me ask you one final question on Boehner. Some Republicans have said that Boehner's lawsuit is a waste of time because, as you mentioned, Congress has other options, two other options, one involving funding. There's also the fact that this will never get through the courts while Obama's still president. So is it more cosmetic, or does Boehner actually think, or is there any chance, I should ask you, that this will mean anything in any time in the near future?
It's cosmetic, but I think that cosmetics matter here, and I think that we ought to be all on the same page when we call this administration criminal. These are not people who are just poorly informed or people who are not involved in criminal activity or people who are just on the other side of the political aisle. These are criminals who are routinely violating federal law and violating the separation of powers. And in that sense, I think Boehner is exactly right to file the lawsuit.
All right, well, read all about it in Ben Shapiro's new bestseller, ladies and gentlemen, The People versus Barack Obama. Ben, always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you very much.
You too. Be well.
All right, Ben Shapiro, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very interesting. And look, I stress to you, I plead with you to understand, and I know for the most part I'm preaching to the choir, but when someone like Jonathan Turley, acknowledged by everyone to be one of the foremost constitutional scholars in the country, who voted for Barack Obama, I believe he said twice, says that I like the policies of this president for the most part. I voted for the guy. I like the guy, but he's out of control. He is what the founders feared. He's running an imperial presidency. We all need to listen. Coming back with Gimme 5. Don't go away.